Even stranger, that same exact symbol appears in prehistoric Turkey and ancient Mexico, civilizations separated by vast oceans and thousands of years. How could the same mysterious object emerge in cultures that supposedly never had contact with one another? For decades, researchers dismissed it as coincidence. But the deeper archaeologists looked, the more unsettling the mystery became. The figures are all holding the same strange object. Most people call them handbags. But what if they were never handbags at all? In many ancient carvings, they resemble ceremonial buckets, carried by powerful beings, standing beside sacred trees, gateways, and symbols of creation. So what are we really looking at? A ritual vessel used in forgotten ceremonies? A symbol of divine authority? A device representing a portal between worlds? Or could these carvings preserve knowledge from a lost civilization that connected distant cultures long before recorded history? From the stone temples of Turkey to the ancient monuments of Mexico, the same symbol keeps appearing, defying conventional explanations. The evidence is carved in stone, scattered across continents, and hidden in plain sight. Today, we're uncovering one of archaeology's most baffling enigmas, a global mystery etched into stone that has left historians, researchers, and ancient civilization experts searching for answers. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. We're racing toward 1,000 subscribers, so hit that subscribe button now and help us reach our goal. The story of this mystery begins in the dust of prehistory. At a site in modern-day Turkey called Göbek Tepe, we find the oldest known examples. This place is unbelievably ancient. Built around 9,600 BCE, that's 9,600 years before the birth of Christ. That's a staggering 7,000 years before the Great Pyramids of Giza. The builders had no metal tools, no wheels, no written language. They were hunter-gatherers who somehow organized hundreds of people to move 10-ton stone pillars and carve intricate symbols. This was a time before writing, before metal tools, even before widespread agriculture. And here, carved onto massive T-shaped stone pillars among stylized animals, we see it, the handbag. Clear as day, its presence here is a profound riddle from the very dawn of civilization. Then fast forward several millennia to the place we often call the cradle of civilization. Mesopotamia, the land of Sumer, Assyria, and Babylon. Here, from about 2,500 to 700 BCE, the image is everywhere. This is where we see the most prolific and detailed depictions. It's no longer just an abstract shape on a pillar. It's held by powerful winged beings, known as the Abkalu, semi-divine sages, carved with exquisite detail into the walls of royal palaces. In this context, it looks deliberate, ritualistic, and deeply important. Then, on the opposite side of the planet, something impossible happened. The Olmec civilization carved the exact same thing. Across the Atlantic Ocean, in the lush landscapes of ancient Mexico, the Meme civilization was rising. Around 900 to 400 BCE, they carved a now famous stone monument. It shows a figure, possibly a ruler or a shaman, emerging from the jaws of a great serpent. And what is in his hand? The very same object, the same rectangular pouch, the same curved handle. It's an unmistakable match. And these aren't the only examples. Echoes of this form pop up in later Persian art at the magnificent city of Pipilis. And some researchers see stylistic parallels in artifacts from the Minoans on Crete and the Indus Valley civilization. It's a pattern that simply refuses to be ignored. So with this global mystery laid out, where do we even begin to look for an answer? To solve a puzzle this big, you start with the clearest picture. To understand this symbol that spans the globe, we must first journey to the place where we have the most evidence, the most written texts, and where its image is most clearly defined, the ancient, dusty, and incredible world of Mesopotamia. Decoding the Mesopotamian handbag. The journey to solve this mystery begins in the deserts of the Middle East, in the heart of ancient Mesopotamia. This is where the symbol appears most frequently and most clearly. To understand it, we must first meet the powerful beings who carry it. These are not ordinary men. They are the Abkalu, carved around 870 BCE, represents an Abkalu, a supernatural being from ancient Mesopotamian belief. Think of them as semi-divine sage figures, the guardian spirits of civilization itself. Ancient texts describe them as beings created by the gods to act as intermediaries, bringing divine wisdom and the rules of society to humanity. In the stone carvings, they look the part. They are often shown as imposing muscular figures with magnificent wings, or sometimes with the heads of eagles emphasizing their otherworldly nature. And they are almost never empty-handed. In one hand, they carry a strange pine cone-shaped object. In the other, they hold the very thing we are here to investigate, the mysterious handbag. This pairing is constant. It is a standard uniform for these divine guardians. So the meaning of the bag is tied directly to the meaning of the cone and the ritual they are performing. When British archaeologist Austen Henry Leard excavated the Assyrian city of Nimrod in 1845, he uncovered palace walls covered in these winged figures holding cones and bags. He called them mystic emblems, his way of saying, "I have no idea." Other excavations at Khorsabad and Nineveh found identical images. But the breakthrough didn't come from digging. It came from deciphering the wedge-shaped writing called cuneiform. Sophisticated writing system by the year 3200 BC. This writing system would come to be called cuneiform in modern times. The real breakthrough. The moment everything changed didn't come from a new excavation. It came from the decipherment of ancient writing. Scholars were finally cracking the code of ununiform, the wedge-shaped script of Mesopotamia. They began to read the thousands of clay tablets found in the ruins of these very palaces, and the story started to come together. The winged figures were indeed the Abkalu, just as suspected. But the objects in their hands now had names. The pine cone was called the mulalu, and the so-called handbag. It was the bandu. These were not mysterious magical objects. They were tools for a specific, well-documented job. The bandu was a bucket. The mulalu was a purifier, most likely a cone from a date palm, and together they were used in a sacred ritual of purification and consecration. Imagine the scene. The Abkalu dips the cone into the bucket, which is filled with sacred water. Water that was often mixed with special oils or flour to make it even more ritually pure. Then he sprinkles this water onto the king or onto a sacred symbol known as the Tree of Life. Cuneiform texts describe this exactly. One tablet instructs, "Purify the chapel, sprinkle with holy water, ward off evil." The Abkalu were performing this precise ritual. This wasn't just about getting clean. This was a spiritual act. The sprinkling of this holy water was believed to transfer divine essence, to protect against evil forces, and to ensure the fertility and stability of the entire kingdom. It was a way of maintaining cosmic order, of keeping chaos at bay. The king purified by the Abkalu was thus legitimized and empowered to rule. The images on the palace walls were not just decoration. They were a perpetual reenactment of this sacred ceremony, forever protecting the royal space. So, after all that mystery, what is the verdict? According to mainstream scholarship, the Mesopotamian handbag is unequivocally a ritual bucket. It is the bandu used in a specific purification ceremony alongside the mulu. These handbags had appeared only as mysterious carvings or reliefs. They surfaced in Mesopotamia. In its local context, it is not a mystery. The case, it seems, is closed. But if that is the complete answer, it only makes the global appearances of this symbol even more strange. Why would the Mecca in Mexico need a Mesopotamian ritual bucket? And why was it carved at Göbekli, thousands of years before the Assyrians even existed? The plot, as they say, thickens. The power of symbolism. So, we have an answer. The handbag is a ritual bucket. But this answer leads directly to another, even more puzzling question. If the bandu was a real physical object used in important ceremonies, where are they? Think about it. Archaeologists have excavated these ancient Mesopotamian cities for nearly 2 centuries. They have found countless artifacts: golden cups, elaborate jewelry, clay pots, stone tablets, and intricate tools. But they have never ever found a single physical object that looks like the stone-carved bandu. Not one. No bucket of gold, no basket of stone, no clay container. It's a complete absence, a ghost in the archaeological record. Compare this to Egypt. We've found actual ritual objects matching their wall paintings: stone vessels, ceremonial fans, incense burners. But from Assyria, not one bandu. This is a massive hole in the story. How can something so important in art be so completely absent from the real world? There are a couple of ways to explain this. First, the simple theory. Maybe they were made from materials that just didn't survive the millennia. Perhaps the bandu were beautifully woven from reeds that decayed, or crafted from leather that crumbled to dust. Maybe they were even made of precious metals, like gold or silver, but were later melted down for their value. This is possible, but it feels a little unsatisfying for an object that was so universally depicted. This leads to the second and much stronger theory. What if the carved handbag wasn't meant to be a photorealistic drawing of a specific bucket? What if it was a symbol? Think about the tree of life that appears right next to it in these carvings. That tree doesn't look like any real tree. It's a strange, stylized, artificial thing. It's an idea, not a plant. The tree that's seen in many of these images clearly has religious meaning. Assyriologists just call it the sacred tree. The bandu is likely the same. It was a piece of iconographic shorthand. In the visual language of the Assyrians, this specific shape instantly communicated a powerful concept. It was the logo for ritual purification and divine wisdom. It's like how we see a red cross today and immediately understand medical aid without anyone needing to show us an actual hospital, or how a heart shape represents love, not an anatomically correct heart. The bandu was a sign, not an object. This is where the true power of the symbol is revealed. Dr. Irene Winter, professor emerita at Harvard, who spent 40 years studying Mesopotamian art, argues in her published research that these palace wall carvings were far more than just decoration. They were performative. The carvings weren't decoration. They were actively performing magic, constantly protecting the palace. By chiseling the aptolu into the very walls of the palace, forever in the act of sprinkling sacred water, the king was making the ritual permanent. The purification wasn't a one-time event. It was eternal. Every time someone walked past that wall, the magic was happening again. One of the features of it was the upcall, or the upkalo. The akalu are these sort of demigod features. They're featured a lot in a lot of the Mesopotamian art, and a lot of the BA reliefs will see them. It was a continuous loop of divine protection, a shield against chaos built directly into the foundation of the kingdom. In this grand scheme, the handbag wasn't just a bucket. It was a key prop in this never-ending cosmic performance. It was a visual guarantee of order, stability, and the king's divine right to rule. Its power wasn't in its physical form, but in its meaning. It told everyone who saw it that this space was sacred, protected, and connected directly to the gods. This solves the local mystery of Mesopotamia in a brilliant way, but it also makes the global mystery even deeper. Because if the handbag is a symbolic idea and not a practical object, then the question changes. It's no longer, how did this bucket travel the world? The question becomes, how did this same powerful idea about containing the sacred appear in the minds of people who were completely disconnected? And that is a question that takes us into truly fascinating territory. The Göbekli anomaly. To understand the full mystery, we must travel back in time, not just centuries. It's a project in southeastern Turkey at a site called Bipe, means mound with belly, or mound with, mount with belly. But 6,000 years before the Assyrians, to a site that single-handedly rewrites the story of human civilization, Göbekli. This place is unlike any other, built around 9,600 BCE. It was a world of hunter-gatherers, people who lived off the land without cities, without writing, and without metal tools. This is 5,000 years before writing was invented. Stonehenge wouldn't exist for another 7,000 years. The pyramids were 6,500 years in the future. The textbook theory always said that humans had to invent farming first, settle down, grow crops, and then they would have the time and resources to build grand temples and complex societies. This is one of the most exciting sites in modern archaeology, because here at Göbekli are some of the oldest buildings in the world. They date to nearly 3 times the age of the first Egyptian pyramid. Göbekli turns that idea completely on its head. Here it appears they built the temple first. This was a monumental sanctuary, a cathedral from the Stone Age constructed by a society we never knew was capable of such things. The scale is mind-boggling. They carved massive multi-tonnen stone pillars from the bedrock and arranged them into great circular enclosures. The effort required is almost unimaginable. And carved onto these towering T-shaped pillars, among terrifying depictions of foxes, scorpions, and birds, we find it once more, the handbag. But here it is different. At Göbekli, the handbag is not held by a winged genie in a ritual. It stands alone, carved in isolation. It appears as a distinct abstract symbol, often positioned above the heads of animals. The core form is unmistakable, that same rectangle with a curved handle on top. But its context is entirely new and strange. It's not part of a scene we can easily read. It is a symbol placed among other powerful symbols, a piece of a visual language that is utterly lost to us. This discovery creates a huge problem. The people of Göbekli had no conceivable connection to the Mesopotamians. They existed in a different world, separated by an unimaginable gulf of time. There was no trade, no migration, no shared culture that could explain this. So why is this symbol here? How can the same image appear in 2 places with 6 millennia between them? This isn't just a coincidence. It feels like a message. Klaus Schmidt, the German archaeologist who led excavations from 1996 until his death in 2014, wrote that these symbols likely weren't depicting real containers. In his interpretation, their placement high on pillars among animal reliefs suggested they held cosmological or shamanic significance. We have this high relief of a leopard. This is an extremely complex society. Yes. And this is a surprise. We didn't know this. We didn't expect it. Possibly representing thresholds between the physical and spiritual realms. Others have wondered if it represents a celestial body like the moon, or a more general powerful idea of containing spiritual power, or the very essence of life itself, and Stonehenge by thousands of years. Experts say when Göbekli was built in southeastern Turkey, it may have been used in rituals to commemorate the dead. The meaning at Göbekli is still debated, but one thing is crystal clear. This symbol's roots are far older and more fundamental than anyone ever suspected. It isn't an Assyrian invention. It is something much more primal, emerging from the deepest foundations of the human psyche. This is the first major crack in a neat and tidy explanation. It proves the symbol transcends a single culture or time period. The Mesopotamians didn't create it. They inherited an ancient idea and gave it their own specific meaning. And just when you think the mystery cannot get any deeper, the story makes an even more dramatic leap. The plot doesn't just jump forward in time, it vaults across an entire ocean to a completely separate cradle of civilization. Theme connection. Centuries later and thousands of miles away, a new power was rising. In the humid lowlands of what is now Mexico, the first great civilization of the Americas was taking shape. Theme. These were the people who laid the groundwork for all the complex cultures that would follow, from the Maya to the Aztecs. And in their art, we find the mystery waiting for us once again. The most famous example comes from an X-site called La Venta. Here, archaeologists uncovered a stunning stone sculpture known as Monument 19. The carving shows a man sitting as if in a state of calm power. But he isn't just any man. He is depicted emerging from the gaping jaws of a feathered serpent. This creature is a very early version of a god that would later be known throughout Mesoamerica as Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent deity of wisdom and life. The scene is clearly one of transformation and divine connection, and there held firmly in the figure's hand is the object, the same rectangular pouch, the same curved handle. It is a mirror image of the symbol from across the world. The similarity is so precise, it is jarring. This is not a vague resemblance. The form is identical. So what could it mean in this completely different context? For the Memek, the object likely had its own local meaning deeply tied to their worldview. Among interpretations proposed by Mesoamerican archaeologists, one suggests that it represents a bag of copal incense. Copal was a sacred resin burned throughout Mesoamerica. The smoke was believed to carry prayers up to the gods and to help shamans communicate with the spirit world. In this context, the figure could be a shaman or a ruler using the incense to connect with the divine serpent spirit, the bag serving as a vessel for this powerful spiritual tool. Another compelling idea is that it represents a sacred bundle. In many Mesoamerican cultures, rulers and priests carried bundles that contained objects of immense power, relics, charms, or symbols that legitimized their authority and connected them to their ancestors. These bundles were more than just bags. They were the very heart of political and spiritual power. The later Maya had their god bundles, and the Mek may have had a similar concept. Maya codices show rulers carrying wrapped bundles during coronation ceremonies. These contained jade, obsidian, and ancestor relics, the physical proof of divine authority. The bag then would symbolize the container of kingship and divine knowledge. But here lies the crucial, inescapable point. There is absolutely no evidence, no archaeological, genetic, or historical data to suggest that the Kwa and the Mesopotamians ever met. They were separated by the vast Atlantic Ocean, developing their civilizations in total isolation from one another. The Atlantic crossing wasn't achieved until 1492. These carvings were made 2,400 years earlier.